You ever walked into a place and felt invisible? Not the kind of invisible that's quiet or peaceful, but the kind where people look right through you. Like you don't matter. Like you're in the way. That's exactly how Monica Harris felt the moment she stepped into the lobby of the Westbridge Police Department. Dripping ceilings, buzzing fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old coffee and disappointment in the air. You wouldn't guess this building was supposed to be a pillar of justice. She looked like any working-class woman. Gray t-shirt, worn sneakers, old jeans that had faded at the knees, a cheap baseball cap pulled low to hide most of her face, hair tied back, no makeup, just plain. And that was the point. Because Monica Harris wasn't just any woman walking in for help. A week ago, she'd been sworn in as the new police chief of Sterling City. At 42, she was a black woman with 2 decades of service, known for dismantling corruption in one of the toughest precincts on the East Coast. She'd faced protests, lawsuits, media smear campaigns, and still walked into work each day like her purpose weighed more than the bullets on her belt. But today, she was undercover. She wasn't here to be chief. Today, she was Marie Jones, a fictitious name for a very real mission. You see, Monica had a theory that the problems in a department don't start with the headlines. They start in the hallways, at the front desks, in the everyday moments when power meets vulnerability. Sterling City had a problem. Actually, several. In the past 2 years alone, there had been a spike in complaints from citizens, especially Black and Latino residents. Complaints that vanished into internal reviews, recordings that mysteriously got lost. Officers who faced zero consequences after blatant misconduct. Trust had withered. And the people were tired. Monica wasn't just brought in to lead, she was brought in to clean house. But you can't clean what you can't see. So she devised a plan. One nobody else knew about. No PR, no announcements. Just Monica, blending into the crowd, showing up at different precincts without warning, pretending to be a citizen in need. And today, her first stop was Westbridge. She parked her borrowed, slightly rusty Toyota Camry 3 blocks away, choosing to walk the rest. It was a calculated decision. Blend in, feel the pavement, hear the sounds of the neighborhood, not from the safety of an SUV or with 2 deputies behind her. Alone. As she stepped through the glass doors, the chill in the air had nothing to do with the temperature. A white man in his mid-40s sat behind the tall wooden reception counter, Officer Peter Rourke. Stocky build, buzz-cut hair, eyes like slits that didn't miss judgment. He was the kind of cop Monica had read about too many times in disciplinary reports. Impolite, impatient, unpredictable, and protected by years of bureaucratic blind eyes. Officer Rourke didn't even look up from his phone when she approached, so she waited. 1 minute. 2. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Excuse me, officer." That's when he looked up and looked through her. "What?" he barked, with a tone that could peel paint off walls. I'm here to ask about how to file a temporary restraining order," she said calmly, sticking to the plan. "I live nearby. My neighbor's been threatening me after I reported him for noise. I read that I need a police report first." Rourke sighed like she'd just asked him to rebuild the station from scratch. "A restraining order? Lady, go to the county courthouse. We don't do that here," he said, waving a hand like she was shooing away a fly. She tried again, politely. "Yes, I know the paperwork goes through the courts, but don't I need—" "Jesus Christ," he muttered under his breath. Then louder, "What is it with your kind always dragging in your apartment drama like it's a murder case?" Silence. That phrase, "your kind," hung in the air like poison. Monica didn't flinch, but she felt the heat behind her eyes, the sharp burn of restraint digging into her spine. She glanced around. A few civilians sitting on stiff blue plastic chairs pretended not to hear. A young officer in the corner froze halfway through stacking a pile of papers. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. And then Rourke stood up, grabbed a half-glass plastic water bottle and, with a disgusted grunt, unlocked the counter's side door. Monica felt her heartbeat slow, not speed up, slow, like it always did before impact, before everything changed. She watched him march up to her, unscrewing the bottle cap with shaking hands, and without a word he tipped the bottle straight over her head, pulled water over her face, her hair, her shirt. Gasps echoed, chairs creaked, the room fell into a thick, horrified silence. Monica stood there, water dripping from the rim of her cap, soaking her t-shirt, pooling around her shoes. Stillness. And then, very slowly, deliberately, she raised her head. Rourke looked at her. Smug, triumphant. But in her eyes something changed. Not fear, not embarrassment, something else. A warning, and that's when the temperature in the room dropped. The water clung to Monica Harris's skin like judgment. Her gray t-shirt was now several shades darker, molded to her body. Her sneakers squished slightly with every shift of weight. But she didn't speak, not yet, because silence, in that moment, said more than any scream could. Officer Peter Rourke stood inches away, the empty bottle still clutched in his hand, chest heaving. His face was flushed with exertion, and something uglier, something like satisfaction. As if he'd just restored order in his kingdom, as if what he did was justified, but his victory was short-lived. Monica lifted her hand, wiped a slow streak of water from her cheek, then pushed the brim of her cap back just enough to reveal her eyes. Her gaze was razor-sharp. "You said, 'my kind,'" she said calmly, her voice low but precise. "What exactly did you mean by that, officer?" Her question didn't echo, it cut. Rourke shifted uncomfortably, momentarily unsure, then, like a man doubling down on a bluff, he squared his shoulder. "I meant people who come here wasting our time," he snapped. "We're not here for whining, we're here for real problems, real criminals." "And I'm not a real citizen?" she asked. He sneered. "You're here to stir up trouble. That's what you people do." The room remained frozen. The young officer in the corner, his name tag reading Ortiz, visibly swallowed but still didn't intervene. The civilians looked from one another, some nervously, some with wide eyes, but none dared to speak. Monica's heart pounded, not from fear, but from restraint. Every instinct screamed for her to shut this man down, reveal who she was, end this, now. But she didn't. Not yet. She needed to see how far this would go. Needed to know whether this was an isolated moment or a symptom of something deeply embedded in this department's culture. "Officer," she said, her voice firm now, her spine straightening, "you have a duty to take reports from all citizens. I'm not asking you to arrest anyone. I'm asking you to document a complaint of harassment." Rourke rolled his eyes with dramatic exaggeration. "You people throw that word around like candy. Harassment. Threats. You hear footsteps upstairs and think it's a crime scene. Look, lady, I don't have time for your nonsense." Monica took a slow breath, her tone steady but hardening. "Then I'll need your name and badge number." "For the record?" That was it. The moment the mask of professionalism dropped entirely, Rourke's face contorted, his lips curled. He slammed the bottle on the counter, startling a nearby civilian. "You want my badge number?" he growled. "So you can go crying to internal affairs, file your little complaint and ruin my life over your damn paranoia? You think you can walk in here, demand things, push around cops like me who've been doing this job longer than you've been alive?" He stepped closer, his voice now booming. "I know your type, always looking for something to complain about, wanting to sue the department, wanting attention, wanting to play victim." Monica didn't flinch. "I want accountability." He laughed bitterly. "Well, maybe you should go find someone who gives a damn." By now, Officer Ortiz had stopped pretending to sort papers. He was frozen behind the file cabinet, watching everything, his eyes darting from Monica to Rourke and back again. He looked like a man on the edge, unsure if speaking up would make him part of the solution or the next target. Monica turned back to the civilians. One woman had quietly taken out her phone, filming. A man in a baseball cap lowered his head, shaking it slowly. A teenager near the door looked like he might cry. It was happening, right in front of them. Monica turned back to Rourke. "I'm not leaving," she said, loud and clear, "not until I either file my report or speak with your supervisor. You don't get to dismiss me, not today." Rourke's composure finally cracked. His hand twitched. His breathing grew uneven. "You know what?" he snapped. "I will get my supervisor. I'll get someone to drag your ass out of here if I have to." And then, without warning, he stormed around the counter again, chest puffed, shoulders tense. He was unraveling, fast. Monica stood her ground. Rourke walked right up to her again, too close this time. His voice dropped into a hiss. "You made a mistake coming here." And that's when Monica did something that stopped the room cold. She reached up, took the brim of her cap between her fingers and slowly, deliberately, removed it. Her face now fully visible, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, damp but unmistakably polished. Her eyes fierce, her jawline unmistakable. Even Officer Ortiz audibly gasped. Monica took a step forward. "Officer Peter Rourke," she said in a new tone, one infused with command like a switch had flipped. "Badge number 482. Rourke blinked. "My name is Monica Harris. 1 week ago I was sworn in as the Chief of Police of the Sterling City Police Department." Time stopped. She let the words hang. "I came here today in plain clothes, no entourage, no cameras, because I wanted to see for myself how citizens are treated when they don't wear a badge." And now, suddenly, everyone was watching. The woman with the phone stopped hiding it. The teenager's mouth hung open. Officer Ortiz, now pale, took a hesitant step forward. Rourke, however, couldn't move, couldn't speak. He looked at Monica like he'd just realized he'd walked off a cliff. Too late to stop the fall. Monica took a deep breath and leveled her voice once more. "And what you've shown me today, Officer Rourke, will not be forgotten." The silence in the lobby of Westbridge Police Station was unlike any silence before. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Crushing like the moment before a thunderstorm splits the sky open. Monica Harris stood firm, in her soaked gray shirt, water dripping from her sleeves onto the old tile floor. But now, she no longer looked like the anonymous woman in need of help. She looked like a commander. Oh, she looked like a reckoning. Officer Rourke didn't speak. He couldn't. He blinked once, then again, slower. His jaw clenched. But his eyes, they were beginning to widen. Recognition was dawning, and so was the horror. "You're," he croaked, the bravado now leaking from his voice like air from a punctured tire. "You're the chief?" Monica nodded once. "Correct." Rourke took a step back, then another. The empty water bottle slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a soft plastic clatter. I didn't know," he stammered. "I swear to God, I didn't know it was you." "That's exactly the point," Monica cut in, her tone cool and razor sharp. "You didn't know, and this is how you treat people when no one's watching." Rourke's face turned a sickly pale, like the blood had drained straight from his skull. His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked like a man suddenly aware he was standing in the middle of a trap he'd built himself. From the back of the room, Officer Ortiz finally stepped forward. "Ma'am, he began, uncertain, clearly rattled. "Get your sergeant," Monica said without turning to look at him. "Now." Ortiz didn't hesitate. He bolted through the side hallway like a man running from a burning building. Rourke, meanwhile, had begun to tremble. "Chief, please. I wasn't trying to. I had a long day, my wife's sick, I didn't mean to." His voice cracked like old wood, brittle and exposed. "You assaulted a citizen," Monica said calmly. "You poured water on a woman seeking help. You mocked her, dismissed her, and used racialized language in front of a room full of witnesses." "No, no, no," Rourke muttered. He collapsed to his knees. "Please, please, Chief, don't end my career. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was you." "It shouldn't have mattered who I was." Her words dropped like iron. Gasps came from the civilians watching. The woman with the phone now filming without shame. The teenager near the wall nodding slowly. The older man whispering to his wife. Rourke pressed his palms together. He looked like he was praying. "I've got 2 kids in school," he whimpered. "My pension, my wife's treatments, I lost my temper. That's all. Please, I'm begging you." The man who had once loomed large behind a badge and bulletproof glass was now reduced to a broken, pleading figure on the cold tile. And still, Monica didn't flinch. She'd seen this pattern too many times. The aggression, the abuse, the humiliation, and then, when confronted, comes the pleading. The apologies, the tears. It didn't move her. The lobby doors swung open. Sergeant Terrence Miller entered briskly. A tall, broad-shouldered black man in his 50s. He stopped cold at the sight in front of him, his new boss, dripping wet, and one of his officers on the floor in a state of collapse. "Chief Harris?" he asked, stunned. "Yes, Sergeant," Monica said, standing tall. "Officer Rourke is to be immediately relieved of duty. Take his badge, his service weapon, and escort him to a secure room. He is not to speak with anyone until Internal Affairs arrives. Is that understood?" Miller straightened instantly. "Understood, Chief." "And, Sergeant," she added, "I want a full written report. Witness statements from everyone in this lobby. I will be filing my own statement as the victim." Rourke let out a small sob as Miller knelt beside him. "You did this to yourself," Miller said, his voice hard. As Miller and Ortiz lifted Rourke to his feet, Monica turned to face the civilians. "I want to thank those of you who stayed," she said, meeting their eyes. "What happened today is not acceptable. Not here. Not anywhere." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. But then, slowly, the woman holding the phone lowered her hand and clapped once, twice. And then the man in the baseball cap joined. A slow, reluctant applause began. Quiet at first, but steady. It wasn't for the badge, it was for the courage. Monica gave them a small nod and walked toward the staff hallway. The water still clung to her, but her steps were steady. Her presence filled the space like thunderclouds after lightning. Back in the office, she would dry off. But in that lobby, Monica Harris had just made a storm hit the system. By the end of that day, Officer Peter Rourke was no longer a man with authority. He was just a man suspended, stripped of his badge, and left with nothing but the crushing weight of his own actions. Internal Affairs arrived within the hour. The team, seasoned investigators handpicked from across the state, moved with precision. They interviewed every witness. They pulled the security footage from every angle. They listened to the trembling voice of the young officer who had stood frozen in the corner. And most importantly, they listened to Monica Harris. Her statement was simple, unemotional, meticulous. She walked them through every moment, from stepping into the station, to the refusal of service, to the assault. She made no embellishments. She didn't need to. The truth was damning enough. And then came the footage. There, on the grainy but undeniable footage, Rourke could be seen tossing insults, dismissing her, ignoring basic protocol, and finally stepping out from behind the counter to pour a bottle of water over the head of a woman seeking help. No context, no ambiguity, no defense. The city held its breath. Would he be fired? Arrested? Swept under the rug? Monica had a different plan. When the disciplinary board convened, they found themselves staring at a case so clear, so indefensible, that termination was an obvious and easy path. But Monica Harris, in her first act as chief under public scrutiny, didn't choose the easy path. She chose the righteous one. She offered something rare in law enforcement leadership: accountable mercy. Rourke was suspended for 1 full year, without pay, no access to benefits, no early retirement. And if that weren't enough, he would only be eligible to apply for reinstatement after completing a 2-year program called Second Chance. It was no formality, it was hell. Mandatory psychological therapy, bi-weekly reports to a civilian oversight panel, 200 hours of community service in neighborhoods he once disrespected. And perhaps hardest of all, mandatory classes in implicit bias, anger regulation, and conflict de-escalation, the very things he'd refused to acknowledge for decades. Failure to comply, termination without appeal. Some called the punishment too light, others called it too cruel. But Monica didn't flinch. She stood at a podium in front of press cameras, city officials, and skeptical officers, and said with full conviction, What Officer Rourke did was wrong, vile, unforgivable in the moment, but if we only punish and never reform, we perpetuate the same culture we claim to oppose. This is not about revenge, it's about transformation. The city listened. And more importantly, the department listened. Within weeks, Monica's decision echoed across precincts. Officers were put on notice. Disrespect wouldn't be tolerated. Not under the new chief. Mandatory bias training was no longer a box to check, it was a process with teeth. Supervisors were instructed to file real-time reports of community complaints. Cameras were installed at every front desk, and whistleblower protection was quietly expanded for officers like Ortiz, those who'd seen wrong but felt powerless. But the ripple went deeper. Community leaders, once skeptical of yet another outsider coming in with promises, now saw action, real action. Town halls filled up, people spoke, sometimes for the first time, about being dismissed, mocked, ignored by officers who had sworn to protect them, and they felt, finally, heard. As for Officer Rourke, he disappeared from public view. No interviews, no appearances. He quietly entered the Second Chance program, his pride shattered, his future uncertain. Whether he would complete it, or whether his soul would ever shift under the weight of forced reflection, no one could say. But one thing was clear, he had no power left to abuse. And Monica? She didn't bask in the attention, she declined major interviews, refused to be turned into a political figurehead or viral headline. Instead, she did what real leaders do. She worked. She showed up at precincts unannounced. She rode along on community patrols. She sat down with grieving mothers and angry teens and retired officers who wanted to believe again. She didn't preach reform, she embodied it. And through it all, she remembered that day. Standing in a puddle of cold water, watching a man unravel before her, not because she was a woman, or black, or a stranger, but because she challenged the rot inside him, the rot that had gone unchallenged for far too long. You see, this story isn't just about a bad cop who got caught. It's not even about justice being served in public. It's about what happens when someone dares to confront a broken system. Not with vengeance, but with vision. It's about a woman who didn't need to scream to be heard. She stood there, soaked to the skin, and let the truth drip from her like armor. It's about the quiet, terrifying power of dignity. And most of all, it's a reminder that real leadership doesn't always wear medals or carry titles. Sometimes, real leadership walks in wearing old sneakers, a faded t-shirt, and a name tag that doesn't exist, just to see the truth with her own eyes. Because if you really want to fix something broken, first you have to feel what it's like to be ignored. And then, you make sure no one else ever has to again. What would you have done if you were in Monica's shoes? Was the punishment fair, too soft, too harsh? Do you believe people like Officer Rourke can truly change? Or are some things too deep to fix? Let us know in the comments below.